Andrew Clennell, thank you so much for joining me. What's likely to happen tomorrow?
Well, the Prime Minister's billing it as one of the most important days yet, Andrew. He's hoping to convince the states to ease some restrictions. They're going to detail a step-by-step process out of these restrictions, but I fear, as I'm sure you fear, that the states are going to be resistant on moving too quickly, certainly New South Wales and Victoria, perhaps Queensland, and you're going to see some states, WA and South Australia and the Northern Territory, Northern Territory's already moved, to be honest, move quite quickly out of the restrictions or faster, and other states like New South Wales and Victoria delay things. And we saw a sign of that today with Dan Andrews and Gladys Berejiklian not even allowing 5 adults into your house on Mother's Day. That was a recommendation put before tomorrow's National Cabinet, that public gatherings be increased from 2 to 10. And those states are already indicating that's not going to happen in time for Mother's Day, despite the PM saying he wanted that to occur for Mother's Day.
Well, Victoria's even more hardline. Nobody may visit Mum on Mother's Day. The Prime Minister obviously is most desperate to open schools first. And I'm just wondering, given what you've said, you know, you've got also Western Australia, South Australia, Northern Territory relaxing some restrictions, Queensland to a slighter extent, but Victoria and New South Wales are the big problems. I'm just wondering whether the Prime Minister can keep going with this consensus model when you've got some states being so militant and dragging the chain, Victoria even keeping schools closed, for instance. Isn't it time for him to just say, forget it, let's start calling them out?
Well, except Victoria, the states like Victoria are in charge of these things. They're in charge of when restaurants and cafes can open. Short of changing the Constitution, he can't really do that, so he's doing his best. Look, to be honest, New South Wales is moving with him just slower than he'd like. Other states are in a pretty good position with him. The sticking point does seem to be with Victoria, and I've made the point before, I think, on your program. If anyone's got anything to worry about, it's Sydney, it's New South Wales. They've got 533 active cases. Victoria has 100. You know, a lot of these other states have 0 or 2. So it is a real struggle with Dan Andrews, and we saw a YouGov Galaxy poll today, I think, saying Victorians wanted restrictions lifted. So Mr Andrews has to be careful politically on this, I think, but I think the National Cabinet model will continue, and the Prime Minister's sort of saying it will go state by state in terms of lifting the restrictions. They'll be able to do their own things, but the principles will remain the same. That allows them to coordinate with things like the COVID Safe app, etc. The funny thing is that we all went into the shutdown together as states, but we're coming out at different sort of paces. So it's just not as clean a process. He wants the schools open first, but you might be surprised to learn one of the big priorities for him now, as I understand it, is restaurants and cafes, just because it puts people back in jobs. But he spoke earlier about schools and workplaces, and obviously, you know, the idea of opening schools, apart from the kids' education, is to get people back to work. But there are many professions where people are successfully working from home. So that doesn't necessarily get you as many jobs back as opening restaurants and cafes, albeit with social distancing. Now, some states I think you'll see move on that tomorrow. New South Wales and Victoria, definitely not, I'm told.
Well, when you've got countries overseas with much higher infection rates than us doing this, I can't see why Victoria and New South Wales are so adverse to this. I mean, what, New South Wales had just 3 new infections overnight. I mean, for heaven's sake, what are they waiting for? Andrew, I'm not allowed to go even for a drive in the country, because I live in the Socialist Republic, of course, in Victoria. New South Wales Deputy Premier John Barilaro on Monday said he had driven out to his luxury farm where he decided not to run for a seat in federal parliament. Here he is.
This was a decision I said I'll take on the weekend. I did that. You know, had the opportunity on the weekend down at the farm to build a cubby house with my little 4.5-year-old. And
Andrew, police have decided not to charge Barilaro for breaking the stay-home laws. Why?
Well, I think from what I understand, Gladys Berejiklian, unlike Daniel Andrews, said last Friday that you could visit people in a different house, and that saved him. I'm told if the earlier laws were in, he wouldn't have been okay. As it turns out, his wife and daughter are currently staying at that other residence. But some people will see some inconsistencies. Certainly his cabinet colleague Don Harwin will. He went off to his holiday house and he was fined and lost his job. But those were under the old restrictions, not the amended restrictions. Still, it's not a great look when John Barilaro a week or two earlier had told people not to travel around the state, and he was the first one to criticise Don Harwin for going to a country retreat.
I have to ask, though, Andrew, I mean, looking at that place, I heard someone say it's worth $5 million, and this is his holiday house or weekend or whatever. It's an absolute mansion. How did this bloke, particularly given how stupidly he's reacted over that Eden Monero by-election, he was going to run, he wasn't going to run, and then he blew up the whole joint and called people C words and all that. How is this bloke so rich?
He had a very successful carpentry business before going into politics, which, given the turns in his political career of late, is probably very good news for him.
Nicely put. Now, Mother's Day on Sunday, mate. Gladys Berejiklian, New South Wales Premier, says she can't change the laws in time for ordinary New South Wales people to go visit their mum on Mother's Day. Her Deputy Premier, he can go and visit his family in the countryside, no problem. But other people can't visit their mums on Mother's Day. But the Queensland Premier today could change the laws, just did in fact. 5 people can go. Both seem to have the virus under control. New South Wales, just 3 infections in the past day, Queensland 2. So what's the difference? Is decision-making in New South Wales so very, very difficult?
Of course she could have changed them because she knew it was on the National Cabinet agenda, but Gladys is by nature cautious. Sydney has the most, or New South Wales has the most cases, and this is a real sticking point and a problem in the lifting of restrictions in New South Wales. The state government is hoping to have schools back full-time, public schools, in just over 2 weeks' time. They're starting back 1 day a week next week. Now, that's much earlier than they've had foreshadowed. They are concerned if they lift a whole bunch of restrictions and they send schools back at the same time and there's an outbreak, everyone will be blaming the schools opening. Certainly the teachers' union will jump on it. So that's why they're being cautious on restrictions. This is very unfortunate for the economy, this caution, but that's essentially the reason that's been put to me, Andrew, and it's a complicating factor in the 2 or 3 weeks ahead.
They might be looking for their reputation rather than for the good of the people. I wonder whether if you put it up to a vote, I would bet that most New South Wales people, like the people in Victoria, do want to visit Mum for Mother's 100%. Day, or at least the choice. Andrew Clennell, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.